Today, Pastor Bridget and I are beginning a two-part experiment, so be gracious and patient.
Amen.
Maybe even be amused. Today we are starting a two-part dialogue sermon on allyship and what it means to come together as people of different diversity markers, of people on different margins, to learn from and with each other, to link our arms together for the work of justice. Today, Pastor Bridget is joining me and bringing an experience as a Black woman to what Juneteenth means. I, as a white man, and you will hear, am new to this, and I'm going to ask some questions, and I'm hoping Bridget will help us all see. And then next week, Bridget is joining me in a conversation as a cisgendered, straight woman, asking questions of the first queer minister of the Collegiate Church, talking about how this may impact our faith as well. This week, the Black experience. Next week, the Pride, the LGBT experience. Two movements that are very much on the national focus right now. Two movements that are complicated with complicated histories. So today, I'm going to begin with a bit of history. On January 1st of 1863, President Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, issued what is now commonly known as the Emancipation Proclamation. As you will hear, the issuing of this proclamation on January 1st is but an affirmation of the proclamation first issued on September 22nd of the previous year. That January 1st proclamation begins with these words. Whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord, 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of these United States containing, among other things, the following, to wit, that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against these United States, shall be then, thenceforth, and forever free. And the executive government of these United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts that they may make for their actual freedom. While we generally consider the end of the First American Civil War to have been April 9, 1865, when General Lee surrendered his troops to the Union at Appomattox Courthouse in Virginia, not all rebel generals and secessionist forces did so on that date. The Trans-Mississippi Territory's relatively large army that covered much of the southern United States from Mississippi and into Texas, and led by Lieutenant General E. Kirby Smith, did not surrender until May 26th of 1865, a month and a half after we consider the end of the war. By June 19th of that year, a year and a half after the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, enough of these trans-Mississippi forces had fallen that United States Major General Gordon Granger led 2,000 soldiers into Galveston, Texas, to declare slavery over and to help liberate enslaved people. The language of Major General Granger's proclamation is terse. The people of Texas, he writes, are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equity of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes now that of employer and hired labor. It has been nearly 160 years since the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation. It has been 158 years since the enslaved people of Galveston, Texas learned of their freedom. But this so proclaimed absolute equality still feels far away, does it not? It's what we labor for every day. The holiday we commemorate today as Juneteenth is only in its third year as being a national observance. And by all marks, it is still a far, far away from being equal to, say, the 4th of July, another day of national freedom, or even to Labor Day or Memorial Day. I will admit that I am still new to Juneteenth. It was not taught in the schools that I went to. I never saw it in a university class that I attended, or a graduate school one. Probably only 5 or 8 years that Juneteenth has even been in my consciousness. This is my privilege as someone whose history has been written from the side of the winner. It's a history that I wish I knew earlier, and it's a history that I'm learning now. I come to Bridget today to say, this is what I know, it's not much. I often say this to Bridget.
He doesn't.
But I do say, Bridget, this is new to me. Help me, how has Juneteenth been a part of your life?
Well, Will, I also did not grow up with Juneteenth. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and we celebrated different things, but Juneteenth did not come into my radar until very recently as well. And so, whereas it may be an issue of privilege on your end, it just was not something that my family and my circle of culture was tuned into. The first time that I became really aware of Juneteenth was when I was at Union in, I think, like 2011, and I was working for Dr. James Forbes, and he was putting on a Juneteenth celebration at Riverside Church, and I needed a summer job. And he said, oh, okay, come and work for me. Put this Juneteenth celebration on. Okay, there were thousands of people. There were 10 or 15 different groups. There was the Ebony Ecumenical Ensemble, which was his wife's choir. There was all sorts of logistics. There was a stage being made. Riverside was under construction and renovation at the time. I felt completely overwhelmed, but I knew that Dr. Forbes was confident that I could do it. And it also gave me the chance to learn about Juneteenth. And I think one of the things that, even though we know that Texas has its own issues, Texas was the first place that Juneteenth was celebrated. And so the people, the freed, enslaved African Americans who were in Texas took that tradition of Juneteenth to other parts of the world. Immediately after emancipation, there was something called the scatter. And that's where enslaved Africans went searching for their family and friends who had been sold away. That eventually led to the Northern Migration, which we may have read about in different books, especially Isabel Wilkerson's The Warmth of Other Suns, where people in southern states went to the north for different opportunities. But I didn't grow up celebrating Juneteenth. I don't know if my mother's watching, she might be like, what are you talking about? We win every year. I don't think so. I don't have a full recollection of it. I do know, though, that the song Lift Every Voice and Sing was very present in my life. It was something that we sang in the Black church, and it was something that I sang in Chicago, something I sang here in New York as well. But I think it's really interesting, the fact that that General Order number 3 that you read, one of the last lines of that says, the freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. Imagine an entire group of people who you have enslaved and made work sun up to sundown. Now you are cautioning them against idleness. The idea, I heard one preacher say that we have been accused of laziness ever since we stopped working for free. So the idea that Juneteenth comes out of, even though it's this moment of emancipation, it's this moment of release and freedom and liberty, even within that is still the seeds of racist stereotype. The idea that unless we are working in the fields for someone, we are lazy and prone to idleness. That is carried down through the ages to sort of modern day myths of the welfare mother, or the idea of teens and gangs and crime and black on black crime, as if that is something specific only to Black neighborhoods, right? So Juneteenth was new to me. It's still something that I am looking into. I don't necessarily go and celebrate Juneteenth. It is a day of reflection for me, for the most part, the same way MLK Day is as well. But I want to talk about Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Please do, I want to as well.
Okay. One of the reasons why this song is on our radar is because when I first started at West End, we were gonna sing, lift every voice and sing. And I was like, I think I pulled Will's coattails. I was like, no, sir, no, sir.
You know, Bridget doesn't hold back an opinion.
So I was like, that's a song that we sing in the Black church. And Will was like, I grew up singing it. And I was like, really? I had no idea that Lift Every Voice and Sing was something that was even known to white culture. And so the idea that this was the one thing, we only got one song. This is our national Black anthem. I didn't know if I was comfortable sharing it. I didn't know how I felt about a predominantly white congregation singing our song because of the lyrics. You heard the lyrics read, the blood of the slaughtered. I was like, what do white congregations know about that? What do congregations know about tears watering our path as we make our way towards freedom? What do white congregations know about our affinity and our love for this country, despite everything that has been done and that continues to happen to us in this space? Being true to our God and true to our native land. Are we talking about Africa, which is a continent? Are we talking about the individual countries which we cannot, with any full degree of certainty, hearken back to, that was taken from us? Everyone else in the world can point to a place on the map. My grandfather's, my great-grandfather's families from here, or this is where we came from. I mean, we have Ancestry.com, thank goodness, but that is a general accounting that cannot make up for what was taken from us. And so I'm very glad that we're singing it and we're talking about it today, because Juneteenth is something for all of us. One thing that African Americans, I believe, have shown in this country is how to be patriotic. We love this country. And it's because we love this country, like James Baldwin said, we reserve the right to criticize it in perpetuity. Only when you love something can you see it in its real, honest fashion. This is not a light love. This is not an immature love that we have. We know what this country has done and what it represents, but we also know what it can be. And so for African Americans, this idea that there's a song that expresses everything that we have gone through in this country, everything that we have endured, but everything that we hope. That is one of the reasons why the Bible resonates within the Black community. We know what it's like to be oppressed. We know what it was like to be enslaved. We know what it's like to be surrounded by enemies and to be told that you're less than, to be looked at as inferior. Our people, our struggle, our family bonds, all of it was discounted. I read once that North Carolina planters figured it out mathematically that it was cheaper to work a slave to death than it was to clothe and feed them properly. It made more sense financially to work them to death. So being sent to North Carolina was a death sentence. You did not come out of those rice fields, for the most part, intact. So we know what this country can be. We know what it has been, but we also know what it can be. And that is that hope that waters our way, that is the crying that we do, but we still always press forward.
Bridget, thanks for that. And I want to back up just a little bit and tell a little bit more of that story, because we're modeling allyship, and this is difficult, right? Like we are always in a state of learning. And so it was, I don't know, Bridget started in the summer. The first time that Lift Every Voice and Sing was programmed that year was for MLK Sunday. Oftentimes when the white church gets a black guest preacher and trots out Lift Every Voice and Sing and ticks the box that we've done racial justice for the year. It came up, it was in the bulletin. You know that bulletins are one of the ways that we all think as when we're putting together liturgy. And so it was when you got the bulletin draft and you came over to my office. What is this? This cannot happen here.
That's not what I did. I didn't do it that way.
It was a little something, but it was something. And I said, okay, great. Let me have a think about this. And I went away and I talked to the music department, and we had a talk. The music department wildly disagreed with me and with Bridget, and so I pulled it and said, clearly there's more dialogue that we need to have than we can have on a Thursday afternoon at 5:30 for this week. And I remember when I pulled it, and it was just kind of like, replace the song, and you came back over to me that Sunday morning, again with the bulletin, what is this? And I was like, and again, I was like, what do you mean, what is this? I pulled the song. And you said, well, did you pull it because of our conversation? I said, I pulled it because I think it's part of a fuller conversation, and because what I know is that when singing songs of the oppressed, we listen to the ones on the margins. And I remember that conversation, and I remember the surprise. I remember my surprise of finding out that we couldn't sing it, and then I remember your surprise of, hey, this may be a predominantly white church, but they're going to listen to me. And it felt to me like that moment, and even how you're reflecting on it now, Bridget, I hope I'm not going too far in saying, I think that was the beginning of a conversation that we've been learning to have, that all of us have been learning to have over these past several years. And so today, we hear it. And it was beautiful. Colleen, thank you for that reading of it. I mean, when we read song lyrics rather than sing them, we hear them in different ways, right? We hear the poetry, Jocelyn. We hear the cadence differently. And I heard it differently. And we're going to hear it in a little while here. And today we're going to hear it differently as well. We're going to hear it as a solo. Cassandra's going to sing it for us. And like we would for the other national anthem, we're going to stand as a sign of respect as a congregation and listen again to these words that have come to us that are so important. Bridget, what else do you want to tell us about the song?
I think it's just interesting how, if we look at the text of the song, and if we think about the story of Israelites and their oppression, we see how people have taken things that are traumatic and turned them into moments of celebration. You take something that's been used against you and you make it a strength. And that is something, that's one of the things that I love about being Black, is that how sometimes even it may even feel inappropriate to be able to find laughter and joy in some of these moments. For example, even this morning, when we were getting ready to go upstairs and we saw the choir coming in, and Will had a very beautiful moment with Cassandra. He said, I'm so glad that you're singing this song. We're looking forward to hearing your voice. And then I came in, I said, yeah, don't mess it up. You're representing all of Black culture, sort of this joke thing that we do as people of color sometimes, where we try to find the humor to deal with the trauma of something that's happened. And I remember many years ago, I met a group of South Africans came to my job when I was working at the creative arts team, and I thought, oh, This is immediately after apartheid, and they're going to be very serious, and let me be very upright and mature when I deal with them. And these South Africans came in with nonstop jokes. They had so much joy. After this still, I mean, an apartheid may be over, but there's still a great deal of injustice and imbalance in South Africa. But I was stunned at how much joy this group of people had. I expected them to be downtrodden and morose. And that is what we can learn. That is the good news, that there are ways to take things that have been harmful, things that have been used against us, cautioning us against idleness. And we can take that, and we can make moments of joy. We can have moments of connection and laughter and mutual understanding. And so I'm so glad that I'm going to hear that song in this space now.
I am too, and I think we should get to it. But I'm just going to say, to that point, we're going to pick that up next week too, because the jokes, the irreverence, the language that comes up from people in the margins. Next week we'll talk about some of how gay people talk to each other, which ain't no fit for public conversation. But there is this thing that we have to laugh, because otherwise people will kill us.
Yes.
And they do.
Yes.
As we're laughing.
Yes, like Lucille Clifton said, celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Come celebrate with me.
Amen. We ready to hear the song?
Yes.
Friends, I invite you to please rise in body or spirit as you are able, and let us turn our attention to Cassandra, who will lead us in the Black National Anthem. Lift every voice and sing.